Imagine you're filing a lawsuit for millions and you get thrown out of court. Not because your case is weak, but because of one tiny calculation error. Well, today, we're diving into a high-stakes corporate battle that was stopped dead in its tracks by exactly that, just some bad math.
So how is that even possible, right? How can a simple mistake on a spreadsheet build a legal brick wall in a massive financial fight? That's the mystery we're unraveling today, and believe it or not, the entire story comes down to one single number.
1 crore rupees, 10 million. Now, this isn't just a big pile of cash. In the world of Indian corporate law, this exact amount is a gatekeeper. It's the magic key you need to unlock a very, very serious legal process.
And that key has an official name, the IBC threshold limit. You see, under India's Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, if you want to push a company into insolvency because they owe you money, that debt has to be at least 1 crore. The law is black and white on this. If you're even 1 rupee short, that courthouse door stays slammed shut.
Okay, so let's get into the applicant side of the story. From the lawyer's perspective, how did they even try to build this case? How did they plan to get past that 1 crore barrier when their own numbers looked, well, a little shaky from the start?
Our story has two main players. On one side, we've got the lender, Fides Finance. They're the ones who brought the case to court. And on the other side is the borrower, Anthea Properties, the company accused of not paying back a major loan.
And right out of the gate, there was a huge red flag in the lender's own paperwork. The original loan was 50 lakh rupees. They added on what they calculated as interest, bringing the total claim to just over 90 lakh. You see the problem, right? Their own number was already under that 1 crore mark. So what was the plan? What was their argument going to be?
Well, the lawyer's whole strategy basically came down to this. They were banking on let's call it a creative interpretation of the interest rules in the loan contract. They were hoping their unique brand of math would be just clever enough to convince the judge.
And that brings us to the judge's perspective. Over at the National Company Law Tribunal, they didn't just take the applicant's word for it. No, the court decided to do its own digging, pretty much becoming a financial detective to get to the bottom of this fuzzy math.
So, what was the judge's first move? It was brilliant and so simple. They just pushed the lender's confusing spreadsheet to the side and went straight for the source of truth, the original loan agreement that both companies signed. That's where the real story was. And this right here is the smoking gun. This slide shows the fatal flaw in the lender's case. Their math was all tangled up. They were trying to charge interest at both 12% and 13% for the exact same time period. But the contract, it was crystal clear. It said there was a normal interest of 12% plus an additional 1% if they defaulted. You were supposed to add them. It was simple.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Here it is, straight from the court's own judgment. They found, and I quote, no logical justification for how the applicant calculated the interest. It was a total misreading of the contract. The lawyer's creative math, it just completely fell apart under scrutiny.
So, with the math corrected and the main argument totally dismantled, you can probably see where this is going. The path to the final verdict was clear. The numbers, well, they just didn't add up.
This chart says it all, really. The bar on the left is the applicant's claim. Even with their funny math, it was almost 10 lakh rupees short of the mandatory 1 crore threshold on the right. There was just no way to close that gap. And there's the knockout punch. Because that minimum threshold wasn't met, the court dismissed the entire case. And it wasn't just rejected, it was declared devoid of merits, which is a pretty powerful legal phrase. It basically means the case had no substance and shouldn't have been in this court in the first place. Wow, a dismissal like that sounds final, doesn't it? So you might be wondering, does that mean the lender, Fides Finance, just loses all that money? They just have to write off the entire debt?
No, not at all. And this is a really important point. The court was super clear. They were not saying the debt wasn't real. They were just saying that this one specific legal tool, forcing the company into insolvency, couldn't be used here. The judge went out of their way to say the lender could still go after their money through other legal channels.
So let's step back. What are the big takeaways from all this? What are the practical lessons that anyone in business, or law, or finance can learn from this simple but incredibly costly mistake?
It really boils down to 3 huge lessons. First, and this should be obvious, double-check your math. Then check it again. Your numbers have to perfectly match the terms of the contract. Second, know your legal thresholds. That 1 crore limit isn't a suggestion, it's a hard wall. And third, remember that a case like this is just one tool in a big toolbox. If one door is locked, it doesn't mean they all are.
You know, this whole thing leaves us with a pretty interesting thought. In the crazy world of high finance, we're all trained to worry about market risks and economic downturns. But what this case shows us is that sometimes the biggest threat, the thing that can completely derail a multi-million rupee lawsuit, isn't some big crash. It's a simple mistake on a single line in one spreadsheet.